Hello and welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. My name is Zach Kazan. I'm the managing editor at Worn and Wound. I'm joined today in person, another in-person podcast. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Garrett Jones, our photographer. Garrett, how's it going?
It's great. I had an early morning, bought a bag this morning, so I'm off to a great start so far.
Bought a bag, meaning like a backpack or something you carry.
Yeah,
Okay.
I woke up at 4 a.m.
Got that bag.
Yeah, literally. Woke up at 4 a.m., made a bag purchase, and then came into the office. So I'm on one already.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a productive day for you so far. This is a rare morning recording, I should say. Usually we record these podcasts kind of late in the afternoon. It's a very specific kind of energy. It's 10 a.m. Right now, which is not early per se, but it's early for the podcast.
Yeah, there is energy drinks and coffee all over the table.
Yeah.
Devin Pennypacker, you've heard his voice already. Mm-hmm. Welcome to the podcast, Devin. How's it going?
It's good. I can't help but interject. I'm on coffee number 3 out of probably 7 today. So
wow.
Yeah, I'm warming up is what I'll say.
Is that normal for you? 7 coffees in a day?
Okay, I cut out all soda. I cut back on liquor hardcore. I went really strict at the start of the year with everything that I was consuming.
Okay.
And so black coffee helps with appetite suppressant, but also has just kind of become my new Diet Coke. So I drink black coffee and water up until 2 p.m. and then I switch to just water for the rest of the day, and my life sucks.
Okay, well, more hydration tips with Devin on the next podcast. That is highly regimented.
Yeah. No Flavor Town over here.
No Flavor Town. I mean, unless you like the flavor of black coffee. I mean,
true, I do. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a distinct thing. Okay, well, we're not going to just talk about Devin's hydration for the next hour or so. Today's topic is under the radar watches. We each have a list of watches that are under the radar. We set a price point of $1,500 just to keep things kind of approachable, relatable. We've talked about some higher end watches recently, so we thought we'd kind of take it down a peg. Before we do that, before we get into our picks for under the radar watches, we should definitely do a wrist check. Garrett, I don't think we even need to ask. Everyone kind of knows what you're wearing. You're always wearing it. But why don't you go ahead and tell us?
Yeah, so I was challenging myself to wear other watches in the collection this week, and I failed. I am back rocking the Speedy on an olive crown and buckle Matte Supreme. It's the go-to, never fails. It's just what I love.
Yeah, it looks great. It looked great on. You had it on an orange strap yesterday, I think. Was it an Artem?
Yeah, I had
strap?
one of the new Artems in the Hydroflex, testing that out. Great strap, but I love my olive and muted colors.
Yeah, looks great. Devin, how about you? What do you got?
So, okay, I have a funky one. This is one that I recently picked up on eBay because that is, quite frankly, the price I'm comfortable at buying this watch at. This is the Hamilton Khaki Aviation Pilot Pioneer Aluminum, which, yes, means that it is an aluminum case watch, automatic movement, sapphire crystal, awesome dial and internal bezel, too. And I got it for $350 on eBay, which is
a steal.
A complete steal. Super cool watch at almost $1,200 on their website. You can still buy it new. They don't advertise this watch. They don't talk about this watch. Very under the radar pick, you might say, for under $1,500.
This watch kind of inspired the podcast.
100%. Yeah, but a bit dumb at the retail price point, in my opinion, which is why they probably don't market it or sell it. But there are still a ton of options on eBay for $400 to $600, which at that price point, I think it's worth it. This watch is really, really cool. And I can't take it off my wrist. I've been wearing it for about a week straight, every single day. Even gone to bed in it because it weighs 59 grams.
Yeah, very lightweight.
Yeah, very cool watch.
Yeah.
What do you have?
I'm wearing a new acquisition. I'm wearing the Ming Uni. You have to forgive me. I forget the exact reference number, but it's
Make one up.
I'm not going to do that. I have too much respect for the fine folks at Ming who have put some logic at least into their reference numbers, which frankly just goes right over my head. Because listen, we have a lot of reference numbers to remember. It's
too
tough.
many.
Yeah. I love this watch. It's really cool. I think I'm going to wear this watch a lot in the summertime. It's very comfortable, very lightweight. It's so thin for a 600 meter water resistant dive watch. It just goes to show you that with clever engineering and clever design, you can achieve really impressive specs without just kind of making the case super thick and hardcore.
Listen up, Omega.
Yeah, seriously. Ming a much smaller company than Omega, and we're able to create something pretty special with this watch and the Bluefin, which preceded it last year, GPHG winner. Of course, very popular watch for them. But really enjoying it. We'll put some photos of it and coverage in the.
You put a loom shot up on your Instagram, did you not?
I did, yeah. The loom,
such a cool shot.
The loom's very cool. Of course, it has the loom kind of like embedded in the crystal, as many Mings do, and there's just like so much like. The dial is like there's so much sapphire and glass and like really bright. It's a crazy effect.
Yeah,
so
very cool.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get into the our picks for $1,500 and under the radar watches. Who wants to kick things off? Garrett, let's start with you. And what's your first pick for an under the radar watch? And also tell us, maybe before you tell us what watch you picked, how did you determine what an under the radar watch is? Like, how did you define that? Because we didn't put any specific parameters around this. This is sort of just our own definition of under the radar.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the hardest part of all of this, is like figuring out what classifies as under the radar. So for me, like, I consider it something that maybe it's got a little bit of coverage either on our site or someone else's, but it's not like broadly well known, and it's probably not your first recommendation. Like if someone's like, oh, I need a watch for $1,500, it's probably not the first thing that comes to your mind, but it's still a great option, and like, you know, spec packed from smaller manufacturers. Just really like that's kind of the avenue that I wanted to go about it, because these are like truly, they're known but not super well known. And so with that in mind, coming from a brand that Devin actually turned me on to, is the Traumatic ZY6, and I'm going to butcher this. I think it's Bourgogne is the name of the colorway. It's a gorgeous textured burgundy dial, little bit of loom, but just a small accent, very much like a dress watch. Powered by Estelita SDB 200, 100 meters of water resistance, anti-reflective coatings inside and outside of the crystal, really just kind of value packed. And the best part of all of this comes in at $750.
Yeah, so Devin, you've had this watch in for review, if I'm not mistaken, and have some experience.
I have their newer model,
the newer
the
one,
502 Uno, Archivo Uno.
what were we just saying about
something
reference
like
numbers?
That.
It's,
yeah. Anyway, the 502 is what I had in for, or have in currently for review. A watch that I've really been enjoying. This I think is maybe their first model, or at least an older reference from the brand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think their build quality is pretty good. I think that their value proposition is pretty great. Their name might be a little unfortunate for an American audience, because it's probably like Traumatique, but we say traumatic, even though it's spelled differently. I don't know, a brand that's quietly doing some cool things. And I'm looking forward to see what they do next.
It's just a good example of a brand that like, it truly is under the radar. They just haven't kind of like, had like the big sort of like viral hit yet. And there's,
not yet. Wait for my review.
Well, listen, we'll see how it goes. But I mean, that's so much of, a watch's success or a brand success is really left to like, chance at a certain level. And like, I saw the Traumatic that we have in for review. It's very, very nice. It's as nice as, any number of other watches that are, have achieved far more popularity and notoriety in our community. And, sometimes I wonder like why does this brand or this watch catch on and this one doesn't? And that's sort of, I think, kind of the impetus behind this podcast is to kind of look at things that are like genuinely under the radar. Yeah, that's a good pick, Garrett. Interesting brand. They just haven't quite had their moment yet.
No, I think a lot of these brands, a lot of these models, they need a champion. And unfortunately, with so many models that come out from smaller brands, it's hard to cover everything. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I found this brand originally just like deep diving into Instagram. Mm-hmm. If I hadn't been doing that on like a random Thursday night, I probably would have never seen this model. I would have never heard of this brand, and we wouldn't be talking about it right now. But it's a cool thing to look at it and go, hey, there's stuff out there that other people might not know about. So just keep looking, I guess.
What does that mean to dive into Instagram?
Oh, you don't want to know.
Is it just like lots of like hashtag searches and?
Yeah, it's usually when I'm like resetting my algorithm because I'm being served things that Meta thinks I like, which I might like, but I don't want people to know I like. And so I'm going through and I clear out the cache and I start like purposefully scrolling through things. That's when I tend to find some like weird sleeper stuff.
I'm kind of scared to reset my algorithm just because like it's pretty tightly curated. I do, of course, we all get the things that Meta thinks we want to see that we don't necessarily want to see, but maybe we also want to see.
They know us better than we know ourselves. Yeah.
But I do get a lot of like interesting watch stuff served to me, you know, because I look at a lot of watches and also like movie stuff. I follow a lot of movie accounts. So like, I'm worried I would miss all that stuff.
Sure.
And if I reset my algorithm, it could take years to recreate.
Yeah. So I think it's like a beer with a lot of head. You kind of scrape the top of the foam off and then you drink the beer if you've over poured a little bit. So just go in there, reset your algorithm, just kind of scrub the top layer off and find something new.
I'm very nervous.
Get the the crisp taste of the beer underneath.
Have you ever reset your algorithm on Instagram, Garrett?
I really need to, but that said, the algorithm is so bad for like EDC accounts. Like if you post any kind of bladed tool, I'll just allure to it that way, you get buried. So while my algorithm isn't great, it does a good enough job of sending me the posts from like my buddies' accounts and all of the people in the EDC industry that I want to follow. So while I really should kind of refresh it, I'm scared to because I don't want to miss anything from the curated group of people that I know I want to see their content. The
most frustrating thing for me on Instagram, and we will talk about things other than Instagram on this podcast eventually, maybe, is when you open it up and you see a post for like a split second
and then it's gone forever.
Yeah. And that's an algorithmic thing that it serves you that you'll never get back.
It keeps you hunting.
It does. It keeps you. Yeah. They've really poisoned our brains.
You're playing the game
effectively. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very depressing.
Thanks, Zuck.
Yeah. A big thanks. All right. Devin, what's your first under the radar pick? And I'll ask you the same question I asked Garrett. How did you kind of like define under the radar in your mind as you were kind of going through this exercise?
It's a hard definition, especially because like half of our jobs, especially if you write about watches, half of your job is covering like the hot picks that people want to hear about. And then the other half is finding under the radar picks, which means that realistically, most things aren't under the radar anymore. And that's a challenge. So I kind of tried to find things that, you know, they might pop up in certain circles, but for the most part are maybe sleeper hits or things that I think offer a unique visual or a unique value. Watches maybe that had a little bit of buzz, but then kind of died off and tapered off, or watches that were buried in a catalog because they have a very good catalog. Maybe the brand isn't under the radar, but this model is under the radar in a certain way. And at $1,500, I think there's a plethora of options out there. But I made a tight list here that I think I could have put down probably another 30 or 40 watches if you gave me another afternoon. But the list I have here, I'm pretty confident behind, and ones that I think that maybe you've heard of the name, maybe you've heard of the model, but maybe you should go check out again. So
okay, yeah. Well, what's the first on your list?
All right, I'm gonna go with the Casio Sauna Timer. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna go with the Walbrook Skin Diver World Timer Automatic.
Okay,
it's right around $500 for an automatic world timer with the bezel function. I have the X15 model, which has the really cool X15 engraving on the case back. Just a really cool watch. You know, if you listen to the podcast with me on there, you know I love Glashütte Original and like the German styling of the dive watch. I think that weird kind of backward handset is just really cool and intriguing, and it has that. So it's a way to kind of get that Glashütte feel without actually paying the Glashütte price. And just a fun watch that actually was a favorite watch of one of the Armstrongs. Which one am I thinking of? Neil Armstrong?
Possibly.
It's something like that.
I wasn't aware that there was a connection there.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna
maybe
pull this
I wrote
up.
about it, and you'll find the Word Around article that I wrote discussing it.
Yeah.
Because it's all such a blur. No, those are definitely cool watches, and I see the connection you're making to Glashütte as well. It's a nice kind of like, I wouldn't say like alternative, but
sure.
You know, kind of like just watches in the same vein at like very different price points.
Very, very different price points. And honestly, too, I think they all kind of, if you know the history of watches from Glashütte, there is a history of all of these brands kind of coming from one brand and then eventually splintering off and doing their own thing. So obviously the design language is going to be inspired by those early days.
Yeah.
Neil Armstrong.
Of course.
There we go. Got it. I found it finally.
Yeah.
I need to look this one up then, because I'm a big Neil Armstrong fan, and I didn't know about this.
Yeah. Very cool watch. I'll DM it to you. It'll be in our show notes.
It'll be in the,
there you
it'll be
go.
in the
Check
shows.
out the
We
show
went,
notes.
Thomas Collaro went hands-on with this watch back in April of 2023. He wrote a nice sort of evaluation of it. Lots of good photography there as well, so we'll go ahead and link to that in the show notes. Very nice first pick, Devin. I think that definitely qualifies as like being under the radar. Like
Yeah,
in a
I
meaningful
think
way.
it had some buzz when it first came out. Obviously, we wrote about it, but it's one that I think people have kind of forgotten about, and the brand is kind of overlooked at this point, and you should go back.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to. There's just, as we know, there's just so many watches. It's impossible to keep all of them at the front of mind. Like they just sort of like they come and recede, and there's a natural cycle to this. But part of what this is about is just kind of like resurfacing stuff that we like that didn't quite catch on.
Zach, what's your first pick? How did you define under the radar?
It's something that you said about like a watch in a brand's catalog that isn't as like heralded as other watches in that catalog is sort of kind of what I think of as being under the radar, and that kind of definitely is something that will come up in my first pick that I'll talk about in a second, but maybe in a couple of others as well. But I mean, I think of just under the radar as being watches that are not part of like the zeitgeist, not part of the conversation that we're having all the time about watches. You know, if you listen to this podcast, you know, you hear our wrist checks, you hear the references that we make. Like we talk about a lot of the same watches, you know, week in, week out, for better or for worse. And there are certain watches that just kind of are ingrained in the, watch community culture. And there's, you know, many, many, many very good watches that for a huge variety of reasons just aren't. And one of those reasons is because a brand might have like a super successful hit watch and they'll release another watch that's maybe like a little outside their comfort zone that like doesn't catch on in quite the same way. So with that said, my first pick is the Laurier Zephyr.
Ooh, cool.
Which is a watch I really, really love. I don't know if it's my favorite Laurier. I own the Hydra 3, the GMT, which is a watch I really like quite a bit. Yeah. I don't own the Zephyr. I did review it. I'm just a really big fan of this watch. I'm a big fan of the way Laurier kind of like redefined what their brand could be when they released this watch, and then they did it again with the Hydra Zulu, which is sort of like, you know, very much like an 80s watch. This watch is sort of like an Art Deco watch. Previously, they had just kind of been, focused on that kind of like mid-century 50s, 60s feel. Yeah. And they proved that they can do other time periods and give those other, kind of like design languages kind of like a Laurier twist. And the Zephyr's just like a really nice design. And it's a small watch, but it wears really well. I have a 7.5-inch wrist. I did not feel like the watch was too small for me. It's completely appropriate, given its style. It's very nicely made and nicely finished for a watch that I think is like $500 or $600. Yeah. And it just has a lot of style. And mostly though, I just appreciate that Laurier had the kind of like courage to try something new, at a time, when they were like really kind of like in their bag for doing something like, very specific and very well. They kind of went in a different direction. So just a big fan of the Zephyr.
Important model for them too, I think, because it was at a time point, like you mentioned, where they had found their niche audience, and this maybe didn't speak to that niche audience, but they had built a reputation for like really interesting, well-made, reliable watches for a decent price point too. And all of a sudden they came out with this Zephyr, and it changed how people looked at the brand, and they saw like, oh, hey, they can do different things. So when the Zulu came out, no one was surprised, but everyone was excited because they knew that, okay, here's another thing from the mind of Laurier. Just like a cool, like stretch the brand kind of model.
Yep. Yeah, it feels very much like a Laurier watch, even though it doesn't really look anything like other Laurier watches. Laurier Zephyr, my first pick.
No, that's solid. I think one of the things that like about Laurier that you kind of touched on is like they have a very distinct style, but their marketing materials they go all out with as well. So like
love it.
Aged looking, prints and magazine ads, and like they're one of the companies that does it really, really well and just sends it when they do a release, and I think do it right.
They also do a great job of kind of like teaching their audience about what their influences are. Their the materials on their website always have like examples of the watches that inspired them. So like if you go to their website, I think you'll find like notes on like early JLC reversos, as they relate to the Zephyr. And that's something that they've always done, when they introduce a new watch. So yeah, cool brand, cool watch. Not their biggest hit, but just a really cool design that I like a lot. So
yeah.
Garrett, what's your next pick?
All right, so this is actually one that I reviewed not that long ago. It's the Bucroft Element. I'm a big fan of this watch. Definitely kind of a go anywhere, do anything style is how they're pushing this, and I think they did a really good job with it. Steel bracelet with a hardness coating, kind of this like 3-level dial with really good lume built in, dome crystal. Little mirrory at times, but it kind of plays into the way that their dial reflects light. So you get this like really wide sweeping range of colors. And, there's a lot of watches that come across my desk either for photography or for me to review. And this is one of those ones that's just really kind of like stayed with me and hung in my mind. You also get a micro adjust in the clasp, which is one of my like key features because my wrist will swell throughout the day. So if I can easily adjust size and then go back down on a steel bracelet, that's phenomenal. And I think all in comes in around the $700 price point, probably with shipping and some taxes from the EU.
Yeah. That price point with a micro adjustment on the clasp is pretty competitive. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really like this watch. Like I remember like discussing it with you, and obviously like your review was very positive. What was it? Was it like the dial color that like drew you in? It seems like everything else is kind of like added to that.
Yeah, I mean, so like this hit my desk at a very like doomy gray period in the city of like not really snowy winter with white snow, but just like bitter cold, and all of the vegetation was dead, and there's no grass, the trees are bare. And so like opening this up, I sit right underneath a big light. So when I opened the box up, it was just like the dial was vibrantly green, which just sold me on it. And they've got like 6 or 7 colors in this product line. So whether like there's obviously like a black, and then I think the green or the orange is my favorite. So like wide range of, very simplistic, dressy style or very bold, date night type piece, whatever you want to go. Their colors are really, really good in my opinion.
Yeah. Bucroft's a cool brand. Devin, we're going to see them at British Watchmakers Day.
So they have an LE coming out at British Watchmakers. I remember actually when Garrett pulled this out, it was a brand I wasn't familiar with at all. And I spent some hands-on time with it very briefly in the office here. And I mean this as a compliment. It reminded me a lot of a Traska watch. Just the build quality, the hardening on there, the look and feel. It was familiar in a very good way. It just seemed like a solid piece. The color was great. Just a young brand looking to do something a little bit different, but just kind of hitting that nice like everyday watch category, which is cool.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to see their LE at British Watchmakers Day. The Penfold is what it's called. It has a very cool kind of like sort of like modern art sort of design. It's a collaboration with an artist, a contemporary artist, of course. So just a cool young brand doing interesting things. And it's nice when you Garrett, to your point, kind of like discover a brand that like wasn't super familiar to, and you just kind of like vibe with what they're doing. That's always a good feeling when you're able to do that. So.
No, and I think that's really kind of like the most important part of what we do is finding not only finding and covering great watches that are released by heritage brands, but also finding those like under the radar, under the radar brands that are just really doing killer things.
Yeah, for sure. Devin, what's your next pick?
All right, I'm going to go to a brand that we all know and love, but with a model that you probably don't think of when you think of the brand, and that is the Formex Field Automatic.
Oh, okay.
Kind of a weird pick in their lineup because it's not one of their big chunky divers. It's not one of their GMT watches. It is simply a field watch, but it comes with a ton of different strap options, titanium case. I think it's an SW200 movement on the inside, but a pretty thin package overall. Wears incredibly well. Has their awesome category of clasps where they have like the micro adjust and stuff like that. And it's still under $1,000. Actually, I'm looking at it now. It's $850. This watch is killer for the price point. It has a lot of the specs that we all want, if not exceeding the specs that we all want. And it's just so wearable. I had one of these for a little while. Really love the watch. The only downside for me is it has like kind of a blasted case that anytime you touch it with like oily hands, and mine get dirty and grimy all the time, you kind of leave a little bit of a mark on the case. But overall, just really cool. See how much dial too, so you get that cool like deep lume effect. Just a funky watch from Formex that people don't talk about anymore.
I remember when these came out, and there was a lot of discussion about them when they were released. I think they might have even premiered at a wind-up event. Possibly. I could be wrong about that. Someone will double check me and correct me if I'm wrong. But I remember there was like a lot of attention on them initially, and then I think people just sort of like moved on because it's a very simple Formex. They're very nicely executed, but they don't have like the hinged case.
Right.
They don't have some of like the flashier like finishing that their other like the Essence, of course, is known for, which has like, for the money, like really good kind of like crisp, brush/polish, style, very classical finishing. And this was just in a different sort of like design language for them. And I think it kind of got a little bit lost, but they're very good watches. And the color options too.
Pretty great.
Are really cool.
Yeah. I had that like electric blue LE that they did a while ago, and it was so cool. I think honestly, the weird thing here is we talked about Laurier kind of stretching the definition of what their brand can produce. I think this is where Formex kind of did that a little bit too. And instead of getting the warm response, people kind of were like, oh, I want the tool watches that you were producing, and maybe shied away from it a little bit. So I'm glad that it's still in their catalog and you can still pick this watch up. And I hope Formex doesn't shy away from doing more things like this. I don't think they will. I think obviously with their more recent releases, we've seen that they're willing to try new things still. But just a watch that I think people should give a second chance to it. Yeah, it might not be the flashiest pick, but there's some interesting case finishing going on here and really good specifications.
And it's still Formex, which means it'll be like super durable and reliable and
sporty.
Yeah, for sure. What's the price point on the?
It's $840 on a regular kind of like stretchy nylon strap, $995 on their leather, and their leathers are great. And it comes with that deployment buckle that has the on the fly adjustment too. So worth it, I think, for sure.
Cool. Yeah, if you go to pick up one of these, shell out the extra money, get the deployant adjustable clasp. That clasp is, I would say, probably one of the best ones on the market, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's very good. Cool. Excellent pick.
Yama and its flagship dive watch, the Superman, need no introduction. Since the late 1960s, and thanks to its innovative bezel lock mechanism, the Superman has remained one of the premier French dive watches. Now, Yama turns a new chapter in Superman history by moving the assembly of its entry-level Yama 2000 powered watches eastward to Switzerland with 4 distinct colors: black, white, blue, and beige. The new Swiss edition is available in both 39mm and 41mm sizes, has a patented 120-click unidirectional aluminum bezel lock system, 300 meters of water resistance, and a tapering 5-link bracelet offering all-day comfort. To learn more about the Superman Swiss edition, please visit yema.com. That is YEMA.com. Now, back to the episode.
My next pick is somewhat topical, just based on when we're recording. It came to me last night in a fit of inspiration, let's call it. My pick is any Swatch art watch.
Ooh, interesting.
Okay.
So Swatch for many years has done many tollaborations with artists and museums. They're my favorite swatches. They're often like kind of crazy designs. They work with like real artists too, like important artists, of course, like Keith Haring, probably most notably, in the 80s, and then many other artists like throughout the years. And we can put a link in the show notes to they have a page specifically devoted to their art watches and their museum collaborations. But this came to me last night because, as you know by now, listeners, Swatch released another moon swatch last night.
Yeah.
God help us all.
Yep. Under the radar, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. And every time this happens, it just makes me think about how cool so many swatches are.
True. Yeah.
They make, that was an awkwardly worded sentence, but they make so many cool watches. Yeah. And at this point, I just find the moon swatch to be like deeply uncool because it's just like, so iterative, and they're just doing they're just doing like different colors of plastic basically, and assigning kind of random, historical significance to them. This one, I guess, is inspired by the year 1965 or something. I didn't really read too much about it.
Yeah, I think this one's based on the Ed White, which is kind of where they were going with it.
Yeah.
But it almost, and to Swatch and Omega's credit, like they found a drum that they can beat over and over again that works for them, but it's the same drum over and over again.
They're beating it over and over and over again. And, if you love the moon swatch, listen, I'm not here to tell you that you have bad taste or anything. The moon swatch is an entry point, for many people. And, if you get joy out of collecting anything, like it's all so arbitrary at a certain point.
It's a cool thing to collect too. That Swatch in general. The problem there, though, we're talking about that with the moon swatch, is that they bury their own cool watches with just like a layer of everything. They just put it out there, and all the cool stuff falls by the wayside.
If you go into a Swatch store, like you will see things that are like incredibly creative.
Yeah.
And these art watches are my favorite, but like there's also, there's the What If series of watches, which are also like really cool. There's just a whole bunch of just like incredibly fun things. Like Simpsons watches, all sorts of character watches made for like the specific location that you're in. There are many, like boutique only kind of like, swatches. So it's a really fun brand that's important to me. And I feel like the core cool stuff has been pushed under the radar by the moon swatch, and it just kind of makes me a little bit sad.
Yeah, it's a bummer. You have to walk past the Omega briefcases to get to the cool stuff now.
You do. And I like I like the art pieces. Yeah. Those are my favorites. I have the Magritte watch and a couple of other museum related pieces. Treasured part of my collection. They're just like, they're so cool. Like they have like, like the boxes are like really well done and creative, and like the colors are rendered like really, really nicely. And
You put it on your desk and it looks cool too.
Exactly.
People walk in and they want to know what that is. It's an interesting piece that you can put out on display and not have to throw in the closet with the rest of the watch boxes.
For sure. Garrett, you ever go through a swatch phase, or is that still to come in your watch collecting?
So you see, like I kind of like wanted the Speedy for years and years and years, and then always toyed with like, oh, I'm not ready to buy an actual Speedy, so I'll go get the moon swatch when all of that hype happened and the release, like when they first debuted, and almost pulled the trigger. Didn't really feel like camping outside, of a New York boutique overnight to get one. So no, I've never gone down anything in the swatch group. It's maybe to come, maybe not. I don't want to do the moon swatch at this point because I have a true Speedy, so I'm good there. Looking at these artist series, I mean, they're like super reasonably priced and really wacky and out there.
Yeah,
so
they're $100.
I'll keep an eye on these, and then probably when something comes up, I'll pick one of these up just for a fun, wacky outfit watch.
They're like, I kind of, I'm in the habit of just like picking up a swatch that I like when I'm going through the Geneva airport. There's a swatch store in the airport right after you get through security. And, I walk in and I see, like a swatch art piece, whatever is kind of they're pushing at the moment. And I pick the one I like and I move on. I've got a little souvenir.
For the price of an airport hamburger,
you
can have yourself an art swatch.
Yeah. The dining experience in the Geneva airport is quite a bit pricier than the swatch store for sure.
Garrett, you should pick up a swatch maxi and just go for it. Fall into swatch hard. Just like really lean into it. It's really cool.
I'm not gonna say anything until I get a chance to look that one up.
Is that the giant? Is that the giant wall clock? Is that
yeah, they're so cool.
I've kind of always wanted them.
I love those.
Yeah,
they're like $500, so they're kind of hard to get. And then like the ones that you really want are on eBay for like $2,000. So
yeah,
kind of hard.
Why don't we have one in this room, in this office? I feel like that's
a good question. We should get a maxi.
Yeah.
Look for it in future backdrops of our videos.
Yes. Just not ones where we're talking about our feelings on the moon swatch.
No.
Yeah. All right, Garrett, what's your next pick?
All right, I owe Devin this one. He put me onto this brand again. Devin's really good at finding under the radar
Devin's Mr. Under the Radar.
I work a lot in social media.
It's literally his job.
Yeah.
So this one, I believe Australian is where they're from. Second Hour.
Oh,
I think they're Australian.
Very cool. Yeah.
So it's an Australian brand. I've never heard of them, but they've got a pretty wide collection of watches. So they've clearly been at this for a minute. Lots of great options, but one that really kind of jumped out to me was the Mandela Mark III. So it's got this really like gorgeous, and I don't know the specific pattern name, but it's like a circular diamond guilloche on the dial. Miyota 9015. I think it's like 100 meters of water resistant. So it's enough to, if you fall in the pool in the summer, you're not gonna flood your watch, which is always really important. But just looks really cool. They got some really bold colors. They've got this like bumblebee, which is black and yellow, very springtimey summer as we, kind of get into that season. And I think they're coming in around the like $600 price point. So really great options, in my opinion, under the radar, but some cool dial finishing.
Yeah. The brand's been around for a long time, actually. So like the in the micro brand space, there's like a bunch of Facebook and Reddit groups that I've been a part of, and this brand has been around for a while, but I think it's just always had a hard time breaking through because of just the sheer noise that happens in those groups. But the people who have had them and the people who have hands-on speak very highly of them. I haven't actually had a whole lot of hands-on time. I've never owned one, but I've handled them, and they always seem very nice. Very interesting patterns, very interesting kind of, again, that everyday style of grab and go watch, which I think we're getting a trend from Garrett here. He likes that everyday style of watch. I think these are hardened too.
I believe so.
Yeah, 1200 Vickers. I just pulled that up there. Yeah. So, I don't know. They're an interesting pick from, again, an under the radar brand that has been around for a while. So hopefully you can trust that they're not just going to sell you a watch and run away, because they've been doing this for a long time now.
Yeah, you don't want them to run away.
But that happens. It
does happen, yeah. Do you still spend a lot of time in those Reddit and Facebook groups?
I try not to, but I'll dive in there a couple times here and there throughout the month, just trying to keep up with new things. And I always want to find the new brands. I want to find the new things that other people aren't talking about, and hopefully try and give them a platform, because it's really hard to break through that noise.
There was a period of time where the Facebook groups, I felt like, I don't really use Facebook that much anymore at all, but like it felt like there were so many watch groups on Facebook, and I found myself getting like invited to be in them. This is before I worked in watches like professionally, and just a really kind of interesting corner of watch culture, because each group kind of has their own sort of like like the codes that they live by, and a lot of people taking watches very seriously in a lot of these groups has been my experience.
Not seriously enough, and they're just like, every single post goes up and they're like, I can get that on AliExpress for $80. And it's like, no, you cannot. You absolutely cannot. But whatever, if that's what you think, that's what you think.
Yeah, those people are not the AliExpress apologists. They're not watch collectors. They're just trolling, I think.
Swine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's always, it's a wild west with social media, regardless of where you're at. But I mean, to your point, Devin, like there was a period of time a couple months ago where every free moment I had outside of work was, on a Facebook group or trolling through Reddit, trying to really like find the next big thing. And, I'd love to find the breakthrough brand and give them their shine of spotlight, but to the same effect of like, I'm trying to limit how much social media I'm on nowadays. And so I'll pop in like once, twice a month and kind of like maybe give myself an hour and scroll through and like, okay, cool. Here's 5 brands. Let me check on them in a month and see what they're doing. And I mean, so many of these pages, it's like, oh, here's our new watch that's launching on Kickstarter that we'll deliver it in a year and a half. Or, hey, we're taking pre-orders for a watch that will ship in 2 years. And like, okay, that's fine. But I'm very much like an Amazon kid. If I buy something, I want it the next day. I can wait a week for a good watch. So I want to buy something that's on the market already.
I love that you said a week. I can wait a week for a nice watch.
Well, I'm the young one in the room. I grew up with Amazon. I'm spoiled.
God help the service center that you drop your watch off at.
Whoa, hey, look, I find someone local. I let them do their work on it, and I give them the time that they need.
Yeah.
Servicing, very different. I understand that you got to get parts, so on and so on. I've done manufacturing, not on watches, but I understand the process there. However, when I give you several hundred, several $1,000s for a watch, I want it quick. And that's the trade-off.
There's a whole world of collectors out there who are happy to throw down 6 figures for a watch and wait years,
or just never get it,
or never get it. And it's just the things that we choose to accept or not accept, just based on I don't know, like the norms of the community that we're involved in. It's kind of
Or
a
your
fascinating thing.
tax bracket.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm also like, I'm a little older, but I also, am an Amazon person, and I'm used to getting things like, I'll make a buying decision on Amazon by like, will it come tomorrow or will it come like the day after tomorrow? I'll go with the one. I'll get it tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's something kind of like, addicting about ordering something at like 7:00 in the evening and knowing you'll have it at like 11 a.m. the next morning.
Oh,
like,
God.
Or even the new like AM delivery. Like
Yeah.
I wake up super early at I wake up like 4 a.m. Not super early, but early enough for me. I have like had to let people into my building at 5 a.m. to drop packages off.
My door buzzer doesn't work, and so they just sit in my lobby buzzing my apartment over and over and over again at 4 a.m. AM deliveries are dumb. Stop it.
It's like the new age like newspaper delivery guy. Just like
but that's throw my package at the door and run.
Yeah.
Don't sit there and buzz my apartment.
Yeah. Yeah, not made for city dwellers.
Or people who own pets or sleepy girlfriends.
Yeah.
But I think you bring up a good point about the Kazan. Like there is in my opinion, like a certain threshold where when you're spending, call it 6 figures on a watch, especially if it's a true artisan piece, having
which at 6
weight,
figures it better be
exactly.
True
Yeah, and that's very different than like a commercially available watch that's mass produced. Like if it's I'm not going to say a one-off or even like a very small batch, like and it like your James Lamb in the silver case or something like that. Like you tell me, hey, I got to wait 6 months, 2 years, whatever it is, knowing that in mind, 100%. That brand's established and has been around, and you're going to get your piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I see both sides of it. Like I don't like the idea of putting money down and waiting months or a year for a watch from a brand that hasn't like proven themselves yet. Like which is exactly what a Kickstarter brand is in my mind, is a brand that's like brand new and still has to kind of like prove that they're capable of making something, and that makes me a little leery. But if it's something that's like a significant purchase, something that like I know my taste, I know what I want, and like this is it, and it's going to take a year, that's a different thing. I certainly wouldn't want to wait for a Moonswatch, or something that anything that's like mass produced, to your point, Garrett, it's like, why are we waiting for that?
Yeah, unless it's like a cool LE collaboration, something, or if you're waiting for like a launch party, because there are a lot of times too where we have pre-orders that are ahead of a launch party, and then the launch party is where they turn on the shipping. And please keep doing that, because like it just builds excitement, and like we should be having more community events. So please keep going.
Devin, I think you're next. You have another pick, right?
Yeah, I do. Okay. So this one is coming from another one of those micro brands. It's been around for a little while. I've kind of been following their journey since one of their older models, because it was a really cool dive watch that I liked with a sandwich dial, and also another brand that we're going to see at British Watchmakers Day, and that is Clements.
Yes.
Cool. Very excited about this. I'm personally going to look forward to seeing the new Monroe, but the Monroe is the watch that I'm bringing up from that brand. Very cool, kind of field everyday watch. Specifically though, these dials are awesome. They use like a very interesting cathedral handset over top. They use pretty bold indices, but there's a Ridgeline dial, and I just found out, thanks to their Instagram, that the dials are actually based off of like the position of the sun and the day-night cycle, and so that's where the colors are coming from. They just launched a new dusk version, which has like kind of duskier colors, some brush dial colors. Very excited to see these in person, get some hands-on, get some wrist shots of them. Look out on the Instagram, because I'm for sure going to be posting these up. But yeah, just the very, very cool model from a brand that I think when these came out like 2 years ago or 1 year ago with the Ridgeline model, people saw it on Instagram and saw this funky, colorful dial and shared it a whole bunch, and then immediately moved on to the next thing, because it wasn't a brand that they are super familiar with. So glad to kind of see them keep doing what they do best, which is really cool, interesting design choices.
Very cool brands. They're a brand that is like, I agree, they're kind of under the radar. Maybe they shouldn't be. I feel like they're maybe their time has arrived.
I hope so.
They make good stuff. I'm excited to see them at British Watchmakers Day. as well. Have you seen these watches, Garrett?
So it's funny because I'm sitting here and I think you were talking about this brand yesterday, right,
Mhm.
Devin?
Yeah.
Okay, so you said this yesterday and it's been in my mind. I was like, I know this name. I can't think of where it was. I heard this from a couple of guys over on the Form and Function podcast, which turned me on to this brand like a month or so ago and forgot about them in the month, like just because of the news cycle that we're living in. So not intimately familiar, but just taking a quick look at their webpage. I mean, it looks like they're doing some super killer stuff.
Yeah.
Micro adjust clasp, which you all know I love that. So yeah, I definitely need to dive into these guys and then kind of work my way back from there.
Yeah, go back and look at their diver too, because I think you might like the styling of their diver.
Is that the Photic
Yeah.
diver?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take that one off the air and we'll go from there.
All right. My next pick is, I have a couple options here. What am I going to go with? I'll go with a brand called the Impossible Watch Company.
Ooh, okay.
Based in Talkeetna, Alaska. I like their time only watch. They've got 3 different models. They've got an Art Deco model, which is honestly like kind of similar in spirit, I guess, to the Laurier that I already talked about. And they also have a chronograph, which has a similar sort of like mid-century / like Art Deco vibe. The time only is makes use of stone dials, which I know is your favorite.
Yeah.
Devin. Very affordable. Like these watches are in like the $500 to $800 range, depending on the stone. I also just like really like the brand. I wrote a profile, kind of like an overview of the brand, and talked to the brand founder, whose name is Chris. He does not give out his last name. He is quite a character. I hope we'll link to the show notes, and I hope you get that impression from the interview I had with him. He's just a really nice guy, has like a very like clear idea for the brand. And he sees it as sort of like a long-term kind of like social art project, I think. Like,
oh, cool.
He kind of like, he has like a very like distinct sense of humor, and I think he wants the watches to have a sense of humor too. He does one-off watches that are kind of profane in some ways. I'll leave it at that. It's a family podcast.
Yeah, I just saw that one here. I love that.
if you start searching around, like you'll find it. So just like a really like interesting brand with like a very distinct point of view, and I feel like there isn't enough of that in watches. Brands with a sense of humor, or with even like a political take, not that we're like, support or not support like any particular brand of politics, but like I think that brands shouldn't be shy about like telling us how they feel about things. It kind of like helps you find your customer in a better way. So I enjoy this brand, the Impossible Watch Company. I think the name of the brand is funny.
Yeah.
I think the watches are cool. He was kind of in on the stone dial thing, like before it became like a real trend. I remember talking to this guy, before every, like micro brand to like mid-tier brand had like a stone dial in every sports watch that they made. He kind of like maybe saw the future a little bit in that way. So yeah, Impossible Watch Company.
Easier when you're on top of the world in Alaska.
Yeah, and also just like the fact that he's in Alaska doing this is also
it's awesome.
Really, really fun. That kind of like I think inserts itself into the culture of the brand and of their customers. It's just like it's a really unique sort of like little corner of the micro brand world. So
it's funny. I was
definitely under the radar too.
I was trying to figure out where I knew the name from because it sounded familiar. It's from your article. Before we knew each other, I read your article and I remember this watch especially the Art Deco piece. It reminds me of a watch, and I'm not going to gatekeep. I'm going to put this out there. I've been hunting a Baume & Mercier Shogun for quite some time now, and it reminds me a lot of that watch.
Yeah, the Shogun's cool.
And yeah, super cool watch. A little under the radar. There's a pick for you. Why not? We'll throw another one in there. But the Art Deco kind of has like a similar vibe to it. But kind of brings its own flavor, which is nice. It's not using like perfectly straight lines, which is kind of cool too. It like messes with your eye a little bit, making you think that it might be like bent or kind of moving while it's on your wrist.
Yep.
Very
it's also just like this hugely exaggerated kind of like Art Deco design. Like you picture like a kind of like a rectangular case Art Deco watch with like a stepped case, and then like this is that with like almost like an MC Escher kind of like spin on it. It's it's really it's fun. he's making interesting stuff out there in Talkeetna, Alaska. So shout out to Chris, whose last name I still don't know, which I think is just part of the charm. Just really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, you're sitting here explaining this the whole time, and I'm just like, I want to meet Chris.
So do I, honestly. He's fun to talk to on the phone. We had a really fun conversation.
He sounds like a man I could drink a beer with.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Yeah. I think we did it, guys. I think we did like a pretty solid round of under the radar picks. Either of you have any like kind of last minute like honorable mentions that like didn't quite make it to your top three?
I want to throw one out there. This is actually a watch that hasn't come out yet, but was at the Wind Up Watch Fair in New York, and I believe you will see it at another Wind Up Watch Fair before it actually launches. That's from Tusano. I think that's how you pronounce the name.
Yes.
The Super Vintage.
Yeah.
That watch is so cool. Now they do like the Shellback Diver, which is a really cool dive watch, but this Super Vintage I think it caught all of our eyes. I know
is this
Blake,
with like the oval case?
Yeah, with the really bright, vibrant colors. I refuse to let this be an under the radar pick for the next podcast, so all of you are hearing about it now. So when it launches, you know about it. It's no longer under the radar.
Yeah, I remember trying this on and thinking like I want one of these.
Yeah,
like, I remember,
so cool.
Like yeah, they're still not out yet, huh?
No. They're having, I guess they had some manufacturing issues and whatnot, and they're just really trying to make sure that they nail it because it's, especially for them too, it's a wide step away from their core ethos.
Very different from the...
Yeah, and that's scary to do. As we've talked about on this podcast, it can really kind of, excel your brand or kind of hold it back a little bit in certain areas. And so I think they really want to make sure it's great. But all of us tried it on in New York. Blake Mallon, our CEO, loved this watch. He was featured in their newsletter article talking about the watch because he liked it so much. He didn't know about that. And just a watch that I think really caught a lot of people's eyes, and you should all look for it at the Wind Up Watch Fair when they attend. I think that they're attending San Francisco, but I could be wrong.
I don't know offhand, but I remember I took a photo of this watch and put it in my Instagram.
Yeah, me too.
And it got a lot of like good
color?
comments. The green one, kind of like a
me
pale
too.
green. Yeah,
It's so cool.
yeah, no, really cool.
Yeah,
watch.
you showed me that photo, and I thought it was just like a render. Like I didn't even realize it was an actual photo.
I'm just so good at photography.
Wow. The dial on that is so bright and colorful. Like that's really cool.
Yeah.
You have any additional kind of like honorable mentions, Garrett, you want to throw out there?
Yeah, the Trafford Watch Co. Crossroads. He's doing his third release of these. He's done, obviously 2 batches before with some very kind of plain but colorful dials. His season 3 has a little bit of a guilloche texture added in. Square case, you can look him up, but super great guy out of Texas, I believe Austin, off the top of my head.
He has a boutique now. He went from Kickstarter to storefront, which is pretty insane.
Yeah. All right, so maybe not so under the radar, but still a great pick nonetheless. Check him out. I think he's in an ordering process, so you could probably get one before fall.
He'll be at Dallas with us for Wind Up next week. I think is next week. I don't
2
know.
weeks.
Dates don't make sense.
Time is elastic.
But he'll be at the Dallas Wind Up with us, which will be cool.
There you go. So pop in, meet some of the team, check out Trafford Watch Co. Go from there.
Yeah.
Kazan, anything floating around that you didn't talk about?
Still on my list.
Of course, you have a full list.
I think I talked about basically everything. The Pollen model is a watch I really like.
So cool.
I don't know if that really qualifies as under the radar. I feel like people know Pollen. At this
They do,
point.
but more people should.
Yeah. The Dietrich OT collection.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, those are cool. Watch like that's sort of like I thought initially like I'll try to make a list of watches that like make really interesting use of like common off the shelf movements, and that's like one of my favorite examples of that. Like just very kind of like avant garde design.
Yeah.
For like $1,000, maybe even less. Dietrich's an interesting brand. So
cool aggressive styling too.
Very aggressive. Yeah, like very modern, unusual shapes, skeletonization, cool stuff. Yeah. Under the radar watches. I hope that our readers or listeners, rather, this is a podcast, this is an audio medium.
It goes out on a blog too.
I hope everyone who is hearing our voices will add some of their favorite under the radar watches in the Instagram posts and blog posts and all of the places where you can interact with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Warnaround Plus, elsewhere.
DM Zach Kazan directly. Usually on a Facebook group. That's where he likes to hang out most of the time.
My DMs are open, as they say. You're welcome to DM me anytime. Guys, it's cultural recommendation time. At the end of the pod. People just really enjoy this. They're coming up to me everywhere I go saying,
give me culture, Zach.
Bring us more recommendations. I'll go first this week because I have one that's it's a good recommendation. It's kind of sad just because it's like based on like very recent events. But Gene Hackman passed away.
Yeah,
I woke up to that news this morning. Just one of my favorite actors. So I just would like to recommend any Gene Hackman movie. My favorites are probably The Conversation, Francis Ford Coppola's 1974 film about living in a surveillance state, kind of prescient in a lot of ways. Gene Hackman plays a very paranoid kind of like surveillance expert, tracking a potential murder. Royal Tenenbaums, I think, is kind of like a foundational Gene Hackman performance for people my age, roughly. He was already kind of like an elder statesman type figure when he made that movie. Just like an absolutely hilarious movie. But he had a lot of great films in the 70s. Night Moves is another really good one. The French Connection, of course, he won an Academy Award for The French Connection. A wonderful actor. He was 95 years old with a very long life. And one of my favorites. So Gene Hackman movie of your choice is my cultural recommendation.
Yeah, they're solid
this week. Yeah,
for sure.
Great
Cool
actor.
pick.
Yeah. Garrett, you have a recommendation of any kind for our listeners this week?
Yeah. So, I mean, I talked about it at the top of the show. I bought a bag today, which is not a shocking thing for anybody that really knows me. But if you're looking to spice up your carry game a little bit or just need something new, we're getting ready to do a lot of traveling ourselves. So good, timing on the recommendation. I picked up a Tom Ben Cynic 30. They've kind of been re-releasing what they call a guides edition. So their typical bag is very like a colored panel and then a black zipper, which looks great. It's very much like I hate to say it this way, but it's a dad bag. It's a lot of pockets, but very well organized, a place for everything and everything in its place type of deal. The guides edition swaps out the black for coyote tan, which if you know me, I love olive green and coyote tan. So I picked up a Wilderness, which is a dark green, and Coyote Cynic 30. So I'm going to start playing with it. It'll probably be my new personal carry-on for an airplane.
Cool.
So
yeah,
we'll see. I'll either love it and you'll hear more about it, or it'll be terrible and I'll tell you all about that too.
Only time
Looking forward to hearing about it on either front. Devin, what do you got?
All right, I got two for you because they're very different. We brought the mood down. Let's bring the mood up.
Yeah,
I recently finished Beast Games on Amazon. That is Mr. Beast's game show.
Oh, okay, yes.
I held out for a very long time watching this because it's Mr. Beast. He's obviously we all know who he is. We shouldn't pretend like we
most prolific YouTuber. Does he have like the most followers on YouTube?
I think he might be second most. I don't know. He might be most. I'm not entirely sure. We went from PewDiePie to Beast Games or whatever. So it's like those are.
I don't know
genres.
who would beat him.
I don't know. Probably some kid opening toys. But Beast Games on Amazon are so insane. It's just when you watch a game show, you expect there to be like a very slow elimination process where they're kind of weeding people out. He just starts the show off by cutting half of the 1,000 contestants out immediately in the first episode. So it's insane. You just don't expect the twists. By the end of it, you're rooting against everyone and rooting for everyone. I was like nervous and anxious the entire time watching it, so don't watch it before bed. But it's just a lot of fun. So that is one that I will recommend people go watch. And then I'm going to give you a video game here.
Okay.
Which I know, both of you huge video gamers.
Said very sarcastically because I am the opposite. I'm not a gamer.
I started playing Indiana Jones, the new Indiana Jones game for Xbox, and that game is dope. And I don't say that lightly. The puzzles are so fun. The combat is terrible. The graphics are fine, but the puzzles are so fun. And like you get to they say it's not Harrison Ford. You're Harrison Ford.
Okay, so I was you play as Indiana Jones.
Yeah, you are Indiana Jones, and it is Troy Baker is the voice actor, and I think he did the mocap for it too. Very famous like video game voice actor. They're like, oh, it's not Harrison Ford. Don't think that this is Harrison Ford. He does Harrison Ford. It's really good. You get those indie moments. I had a spider crawl out onto my hand and I actually audibly like gasped and jumped in my chair. Just such a fun game. And I am fully immersed. It's really like the first hour sucks real hard. It's like the worst intro to a video game I've played in a long time. But once you get past it, you are just having so much fun whipping Nazis. Like it's great.
Hard to beat that. I love I love how your recommendation is like, it sucks. It's
Yeah.
so much fun.
It's so.
It's like
have
it's
you
both
ever?
ends of the spectrum.
You get to beat up the enemy characters are just called fascists. So like when you see the dialogue pop up on the screen, it says fascist said, "Hey, who's over there?" And you're just like you're punching fascists the entire time.
Yeah.
What better cultural recommendation could I put out there right now?
Literally, I can't think of one.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
go play Indiana Jones.
I listen. I'm not a gamer, but I support Indiana Jones, and in almost all of his forms. There was that one, Crystal Skull. That movie's not good.
It's horrible.
Yeah,
that
that
was
one's
terrible.
bad. All the other ones are good though.
I think
stand by
Crystal
that.
Skull scarred me as a kid, but we can cover
Possibly,
that
yeah.
on a time on screen.
You're so young. I saw Crystal Skull when I was like in my 20s, 30. Like it's not that old.
Pretty sure Shia LaBeouf and I are about the same age. So.
Yeah.
See, I watched this. I would have been maybe 8 or 9 watching it on PlayStation 3 download.
And on that depressing note,
Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in to old men talking about watches and a child also talking
who loves
about
backpacks?
Yeah. This has been a fun episode. Thanks, guys, for coming on and sharing your under-the-radar watch picks. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in once again to the Worn Around podcast. We always appreciate it. We will be back next week with a new episode. Until then, take care.